You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholic, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more to life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more to life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, like some bottles, and press them guns. It's more to life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And we're coming right back at you. We got some. We're back. We're back with some main course, some Saints updates and news, and gonna go over this Jaguars game, another depressing and heartbreaking loss. And then I got some bonus coverage of some nonsense that just when will it end with the players getting in trouble and getting suspended? But we'll get into that, some bonus coverage that I'm sure everyone will love to hear about. But let's get into this Jaguars game and how it broke down and how I almost just couldn't even watch it anymore. So can I get a menu? And the first thing that really stuck out to me in this game was very similar to the Houston Texans game in regard to how the defense played. The defense just didn't look good in the first half. You know, just like in the game against the Texans, they allowed 17 points and then kind of buckled down in the second half, only allowing a touchdown. And that's what happened in the Texans game. They allowed 17 points and then were tightened up and only allowed 3 points, which we know that about Dennis Allen. I've said that probably 100 times, that he's great at making second half adjustments, you know, but he needs to work on his first half adjustments, because with the way this offense is playing, you can't allow 17 points in the first half, because heck, 17 points with how the Saints offense is playing right now is enough to beat them. So that just what teams are doing in the first half is almost enough in every game. So they need to definitely buckle down there. And then with the rushing game, they allowed decent rushing numbers to Travis Etienne. He had okay numbers. With his per carry average wasn't like amazing or anything, but he did have 2 touchdowns. He had 14 carries for 53 yards, which is just a 3.8 yard average, but he did have that long, like 17-yard touchdown with two touchdowns. But the thing that's been driving me crazy here is over the weeks are these quarterbacks scrambling and stuff and taking off. And Trevor Lawrence, he was coming into this game with like a hurt knee, like a sprained knee, and he led the Jaguars in rushing with 8 carries for 59 yards with a 17.4 average with a long of 26 yards. And a lot of those came on like second and long and third down. And just very, very reminiscent to what Baker Mayfield did to them a couple weeks ago, you know, just daggering them with these quarterback scrambles. You know, you think you almost have them off the field, and then heck, you got Trevor Lawrence taking off for 10, 20-yard gains. That's just that's maddening, especially when you hear that he's coming into the game with a hurt knee. He didn't look very hurt. I know with knee injuries and things like that, sometimes it's more side to side. That's difficult, and if you're running straight on, it's not as bad. But man, the defense just was not great in the first half. They did force some turnovers. That was kind of nice. Some crazy turnovers. I think one was on Christian Kirk. He caught a pass and went to the ground with it with no one around, and just coming like over the top of him and knocking it out. Someone knocked it out. I'm trying to think. I can't remember who knocked it out. But it got knocked out, and it got recovered by Carl Granderson, and then which then the offense didn't do anything with it, and then they had another one where it was on a punt return. The punt returner didn't really wait for a fair catch, and his own man ran into him, and the Saints were able to recover it, but they just didn't do anything with it on that one. It was because of a Blake Groupie missed field goal, and man, he's missed what two of his last field goals, or he's missed a lot of field goals. He missed two in the game against the Texans, and he missed this one, and this one against the Jaguars. At the time of the miss, he had missed three of his last five or something, three of the last four field goals he'd attempted. So there's questions for me of whether the Saints need to look for a new field goal kicker or something, and people still rehashing and thinking about that trade of Will Lutz, whether that was a good idea or not. But I don't think it was just going with Groupie, the rookie, but also Lou Hedley. He had his moment in this game as well, which I'll get to in a little while. But the game kind of went on, and we know that the defense wasn't good. It's just like a carbon copy of the Texans game, but it was like at the 13-18 13-minute 18-second mark of the second quarter, Travis Etienne had a 17-yard touchdown, and that put the Jaguars up 14-3, and that was still early in the second quarter. But I was almost done watching it at that point, because I knew that the Saints can't come back from like a 2-touchdown deficit. They're just not good offensively. So I was almost just wanting to turn it off at that point. But I tuned back in, and the game continued to go, and the Saints were able to add another field goal, and then you were just hoping they could get out of the first half without giving up any more points, to make it just 14-6. And then of course at the 1 minute and 33-second mark of the second quarter, it's a 4th and 2, and I had this feeling like they're going to fake it here. I didn't think the punter was going to throw it for the first down, but I thought that they were going to do a direct snap to the up man or something like that and go for it for first down, because that was like at midfield, and so then they were still able to get points on a drive where the Saints get the ball I'm trying to think if the Saints got the ball in the start of the second half, but weren't able to just get out of the second half or the first half without giving up any more points. And that was just maddening. So then they go into halftime at 17-3 or 17-6, which just seems like an insurmountable deficit to come back from. And then obviously Carr, he's getting kind of frustrated and a little greedy and impatient. And then at the 7-minute mark of the third quarter, he throws a pick six to a pass at different angles you see of it. It looks like Shaheed probably should have caught it. Like, yeah, it was in a tight window and it was a contested catch, but man, it looked like he should have caught it. It looked like one angle, it looks like it was kind of batted away by the defender, and then the other angle, it looks like it kind of hit Rashid Shaheed like right in the hands, and it bounced up in the air, and Foye Oluokun returned it for a touchdown, and that made it. I think that made it 24-9 at that point. And even though I wanted to turn it off at the moment that Travis Etienne had the 17-yard touchdown in the second quarter, making it 14-3. For some reason, I had a weird feeling as if they were still in the game, as if they were gonna get something going, and didn't do much more. Neither team did much more in the third quarter, but at the start of the fourth quarter, the 14-24 mark, of the fourth quarter, the Saints did a good job marching down the field and getting in the goal to goal situations, but had to go for it on fourth down. That was one thing that was kind of good in this game, is that they were able to convert on fourth down a couple of times, not every time. Obviously, they weren't able to do it at the end of the game, but they were able to convert on fourth and goal here with the Taysom Hill rushing touchdown. This was probably like one of the best moments of the game when Al Michaels said "Hill yeah" for the touchdown. That was funny and one of the only bright spots of this game, and that put the Saints. That made the score 24-16 Jaguars, and that was just one score lead. Like, I think that they were still in it at this point in the fourth quarter with how the game had gone was kind of crazy. If they could have just done something with those two turnovers they didn't do anything with, or they could have made that field goal, or maybe Carr wouldn't have thrown that pick six. Hell, they may have had the lead in this game. And so the Saints defense, like I mentioned, that they were tight in this game. They didn't really allow any more points until like the end of the game. So the Saints were able to get the ball back with 6 minutes and 44 seconds, 6 minute and 44 second mark of the fourth quarter. And this was one of the greatest moments of this game too. This was like about one of the only reason to watch this game was when they were able to actually tie it again. Michael Thomas makes a crazy diving touchdown catch in the back of the end zone, getting one knee down to cut into the deficit, making it to where they just need the 2-point conversion to tie it. And then they were able to do that, which, I mean, there was a lot of negatives, but there were some positives in this game. They were just like 50% in the red zone. But to see them be able to get the touchdown and then be able to get the 2-point conversion, converting the 2-point conversion to tie it, that was something positive, I guess. And that tied it 24-20, 24-24. But then I just had this feeling, this is something I always feel like when the Saints are having a rough game or are having a hard time getting back into a game, that that their defense has been holding down a team like all game or all half, that right after they tie it, they're gonna let the other team just go right down the field and score, which that didn't happen in this situation. The Jaguars did move the ball a little bit with an assistance of another Trevor Lawrence rushing play, but then they end up getting to like midfield, and it's like 3rd and 10, and it gets a pass gets batted away by Paulson Adebo, and then they actually have to punt. But the thing about them punting is that the Saints hadn't looked real good when they were backed up against their own goal line, and they didn't look good in this situation either. So then they ended up having to punt. And this is where I was trying to get to Lou Hedley. Like, I honestly don't know who's worse, if it's Blake Grupe or Lou Hedley, because this punt pretty much put the nail in the Saints' coffin. Because if they wouldn't have got the touchdown, they probably would have been able to just run the clock down and kick a game-winning field goal, and the Saints wouldn't have had a chance at all to tie this anyways. But Blake Grupe hits like a 29-yard punt. That's all he could get out of Blake Grupe. And so the Jacksonville Jaguars take over at like midfield because of just a 29-yard punt. Like, he's got to be up there with the worst punters when it comes to like average and the number of like punts that have been like under like 35 yards or something. Like, he's just, his punts are like line drives, have like no hang time on them, and they don't go far. Like, the only good punt he had was one that was like a line drive, so it hit the turf and it like rolled like a long way. Like, that's not a good punt. That's just lucky more than anything. But shortly after that horrible punt, which the Saints gave them a chance, the Saints had a chance to go not tie it, but go take the lead at that point, but just went 3 and out, of course, backed up against their own goal line. And then Christian Kirk just gets the long touchdown after the Jaguars get it back. And it's just like there was no defender. It was like they weren't wanting to tackle him. It was almost seemed like they were allowed him to score. I don't know if they looked at that situationally and seen that, oh man, he's inside the 30-yard line. We maybe just let him score here or what? But that was like like really the only bad defensive play that the Saints defense had in the second half was giving up the long touchdown to Kirk, but it almost like benefited the Saints really because then it gave them a shot at maybe being able to go and tie, and then the Jaguars not just uh, trying to run the clock out and just kicking a game-winning field goal. But so the Saints, they ended up moving the ball down in the goal to goal situation, and I really didn't like how they used their timeouts or lack of using their timeouts because they got down in there like it was first and goal at like the 6-yard line, and they only had like a minute left, and they had like 2 or 3 of their timeouts left still. But I didn't like how they like managed the clock because they had like more than 2 minutes and all 3 of their timeouts to start the drive. Like I wish they would have managed their timeouts a little bit differently so they could have at least tried to run it when they got in first and goal at the 6 or second and goal at the 6. Like maybe try another run with Alvin Kamara or a run with Taysom Hill. So instead of just 4 shots into the end zone, so I just wasn't real happy with the poor clock management. You know, that kind of when you're running under 1 minute and only have like 2 minutes left, it's an odd thing to do to try to run it then. But if they manage their time a little bit and maybe had like a minute and a half and 1 timeout, they could have at least tried to run it at least 1 time there, but they didn't. So they just took the 4 shots in the end zone, and it was the 30-second mark of the fourth quarter. It's a 3rd and goal, and Foster Moreau, there was a breakdown in the Jaguars coverage where like 2 of the I think it was like the corner and like the slot nickel slot and dime corner. They both were covering. They like doubled Chris Olave, and Foster Monroe was like wide open in the back of the end zone, and pass just bounced like right off his hands. And man, Al Michaels and the other color commentator, they weren't very hard on him for that. I understand it's like Cancer Awareness Month, and obviously he's got a great story about how he's come back from Hodgkin's lymphoma and all that. But man, that doesn't excuse dropping a game tying or possibly a game winning touchdown if they decided to go for the 2-point conversion. But he was tore up over it on the sideline. Foster Monroe he was like had a towel over his head, looked like he was crying, and his teammates coming over there consoling. So it's good to see that there's like kind of a leadership, and this is kind of a family team. Hopefully they can, it's a negative play, but hopefully they can build off of that in some way, because I mean they were able to score some points in this game, but weren't able to tie it or win it with that drop. And then just not a good play design or play call on the 4th down play, where they throw a jump ball to like Chris Olave, who is arguably out of your starting 3 wide receivers, maybe your worst receiver when it comes to like contested catches and jump ball. So they throw like a fade route in the back of the end zone, and there was just, it seemed like there was a little bit of contact. They maybe could have called a holding or offensive pass interference there, but like Olave didn't even have a chance at it. Like if you're going to do something like that, just give Michael Thomas another chance. He shows that he can make those crazy contested catches. Like I don't know why you're trying to get it to Olave, or try the similar to like what you did on the Kamara 2-point conversion, like an over route, like out of the slot or something. But man, it was just a frustrating game. It was an exciting game, I'll say that, but it's another one of those ones where it's like, would you rather them just get blown out so you don't have to like stay in tune with the game and maybe think they're going to win, or would you rather it be an exciting, close game? So it's at least fun to watch until the end when your heart gets ripped out of your chest. But the Saints are after going 2-0, the Saints are now 3-4, and I don't see a lot of positives in sight unless they come out of this mini bye week after playing on Thursday night, and maybe they found something that works offensively, because I mean the defense is still good. They need to stop allowing 17 points in the first half. They can get back to what they were doing earlier in the season and maybe score a few more points. I think getting in that hurry up offense kind of helped them a little bit. But man, this is another rough loss, tough loss for the Saints. But let's get to player of the game, hot take, and game score. So my player of the game was I went with Carl Granderson in this game, and I think you could argue that he was the player of the game, at least for the defense in this game, because I mean he had the fumble recovery early on. He had 5 solo tackles and 6 combined with 1 assist, and had a tackle for loss. So he had some moments there, some highlight moments, recovering the fumble and getting a big time tackle for loss. So I think you could argue that Carl Granderson was the player of the game in this game, even though they didn't end up doing anything with the fumble he got. But that's not really Carl Granderson's fault. He still made a play. I think if you were to argue who the player of the game was in this game between offense and defense, like Alvin Kamara would probably be your offensive player of the game, because he had like 153 total scrimmage yards, because he had 17 rushes for 61 yards or 62 yards, which is just a 3.6 yard average, and had a long of 17. So even with the carries that he had, it was tough going behind this offensive line. They're not opening huge holes for Kamara. And then he did really impressive through the air, catching out of the backfield and quick routes and check downs. He had 12 catches for 91 yards and which is a 7.6 average with a 21-yard long, and that came off of 14 targets. So he was catching like pretty much everything that was thrown to him, like all the targets that he was getting. And then he had also the big time 2-point conversion, which was big time to time the game. So Alvin Kamara, I mean, if you were to argue who the players of the game were, it would probably be Carl Granderson or Alvin Kamara. So I won't give myself a full on point for that. I give myself a half for that. And then just looking through the stats here, this is a reason why the Jaguars look so good, and Trevor Lawrence looked so good in this game, even though his numbers weren't amazing, but they were definitely good enough considering he was able to rush for the 59 yards, but he was 20 for 29 for 204 yards and a touchdown, which is a 100.4 rating. But hell, part of that was that the Saints didn't get much pressure on him. A couple times they got pressure on him. He scrambled out of the pocket and picked up big yards, but they didn't sack him once in this game, which was just awful. And then another awful part of this game was obviously Chris Olave, having some drops and looking like he's not running the right routes, because he was targeted 15 times in this game, but only caught 7 of them for 57 yards with an 8.1 average and a long of 14. So there's just a lot. It's week 7 going into week 8. We're about to the halfway point, and man, Derek Carr still doesn't seem to be on the same page with his receivers. It's weird, But so those are some of the stats here. Let's go to my hot take. So my hot take was I thought this was going to be like a Calvin Ridley revenge game, but he didn't end up having a big game at all. So I was definitely wrong with that. You could almost give me a negative for that, because he only had 1 catch for 5 yards, and he was targeted 4 times, but only had 1 catch for 5 yards. So it definitely wasn't even close to being right on that one. And then my game pick, my score was this was pretty close. I almost got this exactly right. So I think I'll be giving myself a half a point. So I get a out of the three picks here, game picks and hot takes and player of the game. I think I'll give myself a half for this because I almost got this right. I almost want to give myself a full point for this, but I picked the Jaguars to win 30-20. So I was just barely off on that. I almost got the Jaguars score right. 30. I was only off by that by 1 point with 31, and then the Saints only getting 20. I was only off by 4 points for that because they scored 24. And then obviously I picked the Jaguars to win. So I think I want to give myself a 1.5 points for those for the picks there. So there's only a couple positives in this game. The crazy catch by Michael Thomas, diving catch by Michael Thomas. It looks like he's back. It looks like he's all the way back. And then just the funny phrase that came out of Al Michaels' mouth on the Taysom Hill touchdown run. The hill, yeah. I may have to start using that one. So that pretty much sums up the Jaguars game. If you're just strictly a fan of NFL and just football and didn't have anything invested in either one, or if you're a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was an exciting and fun game to watch. But man, just a heartbreaker and another depressing loss for Saints fans and Hoodats. So that's enough of that. Because the Saints played on Thursday, you were able to pretty much enjoy your Sunday of football, and then even the Monday. So the Monday night game was good. It was a good game between the Minnesota Vikings and the 49ers. The Minnesota Vikings actually ended up winning that game, which was pretty crazy. They ended up winning at 22-17. But as it was coming to a close, some news broke that Chris Olave had gotten arrested for like speeding and reckless driving. Let me, which just like after everything, he had a completely like stress-free weekend of football, Sunday and Monday, and then this comes in. Of course, this comes in. You can't even enjoy your Monday night because Monday night and seeing the 49ers lose, which I don't know what's worse, if the 49ers go to 6-1 or if the Minnesota Vikings win. I don't know what was worse. I guess it's a little more enjoyable to see the 49ers lose, but I hate both of those teams, honestly. But anyways, the night pretty much got ruined when it came out that Chris Olave had gotten in trouble. But here's kind of a police report on that. So it was the Keener police. They were radaring in Joe Eni Boulevard last night at 9:10 p.m. when Olave's car was clocked at 70 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone. The car was seen traveling at high rates of speed, recklessly maneuvering between lines and other drivers. So yeah, that's annoying. We just got Jake Haener back from suspension, and we just got like a week prior to that we got Marcus May back to suspension, and then we have another player like right after that we have another player and Chris Olave, who's been having a rough couple of weeks with just his play in general. Just doesn't seem to have his head in the game, dealing with a bit of a toe injury and not on the same page as Derek Carr. But man, this is just the last thing the Saints need. Definitely the last thing that Chris Olave needs, on top of everything else it seems to be dealing with mentally. But here's a bit of history, like regarding like potential suspension. So Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison, who actually had a pretty good game last night, was cited for driving 140 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone earlier this year, and he hasn't been suspended yet. And then current Cardinals wide receiver Marquise Brown was arrested in 2022, driving 126 in a 65 zone, and neither have received discipline yet. So that's kind of interesting. It's interesting that didn't mention that Jordan Addison was arrested during his. He was just written a ticket, and then Marquise Brown, that was all the way back in 2022. He was arrested, similar to Chris Olave, but neither have received discipline. I mean, some people that are worried, thinking that Chris Olave is going to get suspended now. I mean, he may get suspended now, but I don't think it's going to be this year. It won't be this year. It takes a lot of time for the laws to process that if he actually has to go to court for a speeding ticket, and then the NFL wants all that to play out and process before they hand down suspicion. So I don't think I have to worry about him being suspended. But man, you just hate to see more trouble and issues going on with your young players, and especially ones that seem to be kind of struggling right now with mentally, being all the way in the game with running their routes full speed or running the right routes. Derek Carr got pretty upset with Chris Olave on one play where he was expecting him to run a go route, and he just kind of stopped on the route, and this is a deep ball out of bounds basically. And that was kind of the most in this game against the Jaguars was the most animated I've ever seen Derek Carr. He's usually not one to be cursing at anyone or yelling at anyone. There was quite a bit of that in this game, but I don't know. Chris Olave, man, he needs to get his head right and get his head in the game. And I don't know. Hopefully this mini bye will help the Saints get right. But the Saints' next game will be against the Indianapolis Colts. I'm pretty sure that's in Indiana, and they're just coming off of a crushing loss to the Browns in a high-scoring game. So it'll be both of these teams will be looking to get a get-back game. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?